Sunshine Fam, how's everybody doing? I've had a tough couple of weeks here, but I won't go into details. So regarding my series called Who Am I? I've put it on hold for a little bit because I still don't have all the information that I want to give you for the next video, and hopefully I will get some of that by tomorrow. But I went back to watch some of the episodes of Who Do You Think You Are, which is what I'm basing this on. Excuse me. And in some cases, both the American and the UK versions, the celebrity wants to go back as far as they can in their family tree, and they also find out certain information about one or two members of their ancestors. In other cases, it's the family or the celebrity wants to know about a specific story or stories about their ancestors that doesn't go back too far. Like in the case of Daniel Radcliffe, he only went back to like his great grandparents or something like that. Would have had to be because it was World War II, so that would have made it his great grandparents. In the case of Danny Dyer, he just wanted to know on his dad's side information about, like, you know, he came from kind of a poor area of town. He grew up in a very poor family. I've gotten the sneezes today. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, I even took my allergy medication. That's what happens when it gets cold outside, even though I don't go out on cold days. And he ended up finding out that he was related to a king. So he ended up being royalty, which is pretty cool for him. In the case of Reba McEntire, she kind of did a little bit of both. She started out her story at the beginning, you know, they interview the celebrity and basically like, what do you want to know, that kind of thing. They go into their background, you know, how they grew up and everything, and then they ask, you know, what do you want to know, you know, what is your journey, what do you want your journey to look like, basically. And she wanted to go back as far as she could in her family tree and also find out information about certain ancestors of hers. And sometimes she found out information about people she didn't even know existed, or she didn't know the story behind it. So, and of course, a lot of these celebrities travel to different areas and different countries. Obviously, I don't have the means to do that. Would be kind of cool to go to like England or Germany or France or Ireland to find out about my ancestors, but don't have the means for that right now anyway. So the only thing I can really do is get in my car and travel to central Minnesota, where most of my ancestors on my father's side grew up. And then here in the Twin Cities, my mother's side had a lot of family that lived in Chaska. So maybe I'd visit that area and stuff too. So as far as what I want to do, I kind of want to do what Reba did, go back as far as I possibly can, which at this point, since I've done a little bit more research, I've been able to go back 7 times great-grandparents for my father's side. A lot of stuff is coming from my dad's side, not a lot from my mom's. But it's pretty interesting when you do these searches and you go into family search and you can go look up the person and then it lists their children's names and then their parents' names, and then you can go into the parents' names and you can go into their parents' names and their parents' names, and then eventually you hit a brick wall. But it's like the more I go back, the more people I find, which is just crazy. So yeah, I've gone back about to my 7 times great-grandparents on my father's side, which is just nuts. So obviously these videos are probably going to continue for a while. I do have some stories that go into my parent siblings, and also I know I've told you this before and I made a video about it up in Avon, Minnesota, where they weren't my direct descendants, they were the brothers of my direct descendant that founded the city of Avon. And I don't know if I've put this in a video, but the church that I filmed up there that I thought was a really cool church, I didn't know this when I went up there, but they actually built that church. So that's pretty cool that I was at the church that I believe it was my great uncles, or my great uncles, had actually built that church that I filmed in that video. So if you want to see that, go to my Adventures with Chloe videos, and I believe I just titled it Avon, Minnesota. So you'll see that church, but I don't mention that these uncles, these great, whatever, how many times great uncles built that church, because at the time I went up there, I didn't know that. So I'm finding out a lot of information. And of course, you know, with my grandparents, and the one snapshot memory I have of my great grandmother on my dad's side, she was still alive when I was a little girl. She died when I was, let's see, I was like 6 years old when she died. So obviously I don't have a lot of memories of her. I just have one snapshot memory of her. So I'll share that in the next video, which is not what this is. I meant to put this video out yesterday, and because I have been out of work for so long, all my days are just kind of melding together. And so that's why I'm putting this out today. Yesterday was the 4-year anniversary of when Russia invaded Ukraine. Although there has been conflict with Russia and Ukraine for actually 11 years, it started out in 2014, actually, from the research that I've done. So I'm just going to read this for you. Yes, it comes from Wikipedia, but I'm just going to read this to you. So in early 2014, the Euromaidan protests led to the Revolution of Dignity and the ousting of Ukraine's pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych. Shortly after pro-Russian protests began in parts of southeastern Ukraine, while unmarked Russian troops occupied Crimea. Russia soon annexed Crimea after a highly disputed referendum. If I'm mispronouncing these names, please don't crucify me in the comments. In April 2014, Russian-backed militants seized towns and cities in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region and proclaimed the Donetsk People Republic, DPR, and the Luhansk People's Republic, LPR, as independent states, starting the Donbas War. Russia covertly supported the separatists with its own troops, tanks, and artillery, can't talk either, preventing Ukraine from fully retaking the territory. The International Criminal Court, ICC, judged that the war was both a national and international armed conflict involving Russia, and the European Court of Human Rights judged that Russia controlled the DPR and LPR from 2014 onward. In February 2015, Russia and Ukraine signed the Minsk II agreements, but they were never fully implemented in the following years. The Donbas War became a static conflict linked to trench warfare. Ceasefires were repeatedly broken, but the front lines did not move. I've been noticing I've been sniffling a lot in my videos. It's because I have sinus problems, so please forgive me for that. I do take allergy medication. I'm not sick. I don't have COVID or anything. It's just I have a lot of sinus problems. Oh my gosh. Beginning in 2021, there was a massive Russian military buildup near near Ukraine's borders, including within neighboring Belarus. Russian officials repeatedly denied the plans to attack Ukraine. Russia's President Vladimir Putin voiced expansionist views and challenged Ukraine's right to exit. He demanded that Ukraine be barred from ever joining the NATO military alliance. You'll have to excuse me a minute. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that, guys. Okay, where was I? Okay, Ukraine had been officially a neutral country when the conflict began, but because of Russia's attacks, it revived plans to join NATO. In early 2022, Russia recognized the DPR and LPR as independent states. While Russian troops surrounded Ukraine, its proxies stepped up attacks on Ukrainian forces in the Donbass. Not a lot is talked about the Russian-Ukraine war either. Although it was mentioned last night in the State of the Union address, which I will not get into. On February 24, 2022, Putin announced a special military operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine, claiming Russia had no plans to occupy the country. Yeah, okay. The Russian invasion that followed was internationally condemned. Many countries imposed sanctions against Russia and sent humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine. If they didn't want to invade Ukraine, why would they go to war with them? That doesn't make any sense to me. Have a Coke and a smile. This doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, in the face of fierce resistance, Russia abandoned an attempt to seize Kiev or as some people say Kyiv, in early April. In August, Ukrainian forces began liberating territories in the northeast and south. In September, Russia declared the annexation of 4 partially occupied provinces, which was internationally condemned. Since then, Russian offenses and Ukrainian counteroffensives have gained only small amounts of territory. The invasion has also led to attacks in Russia by Ukraine and Ukrainian-backed forces, among them a cross-border offensive into Russia's Kursk region in August 2024. Russia has repeatedly carried out deliberate and indiscriminate attacks on civilians far from the front line. The UN Human Rights Office reported that Russia was committing severe human rights violations in occupied Ukraine. The ICC opened an investigation into war crimes and issued arrest warrants for Putin and several other Russian officials. Russia has repeatedly refused calls for a ceasefire. Which brings me to a story that happened, I believe it was last year, had to have been last year, where Carpathia and J.D. Vance had asked the Ukrainian president, what's his name? I had it on the tip of my tongue. Give me a second here. Zelensky. That's what's Vladimir Zelensky, or however you pronounce his first name, to the White House, and they were going to have lunch together. Well, in that meeting, the two bullies from our country would ask Zelensky a question, and as Zelensky was trying to answer, they would talk over him and bully him and tell him that he was saying lies, even though he hadn't even gotten out one full sentence yet. They kept saying, why are you continuing this war? Why aren't you obeying a ceasefire? And he said, I'm trying. It's your buddy Putin that's continuing the war. So after that whole heated exchange, which I'm sure you saw, and if you haven't, you can check that out after this video here on YouTube. They decided to kick Zelensky out of the White House, and he went back home. Now, the way that they conducted themselves, to me, was not very professional. And apparently, they don't know how to ask a question and then use the two ears that God gave them to listen to the answer without interrupting. And I'm noticing that happens a lot in these congressional hearings too. Is that these people ask the person that's being interviewed a question, and when the person starts talking, they don't let them finish. Now, in some cases, I agree with it, like in Pam Bondi's case, or Kristi Noem. But I saw a small clip of when our AG here in Minnesota, Ellison, was in the hot seat about that fraud case, which was taken care of way before ICE even got here, which was the Feeding Our Future fraud with the Somalis, and something to do with daycares and taking money and pocketing it and all this stuff. Yes, there was fraud here, but we took care of it. Those people were all in jail before ICE even showed up here. So why it's still an issue? Like, we're allowing these people out of jail to go and commit more fraud is beyond me, because those people are sitting in jail. They've been in jail since December. So when they were talking to AG Ellison from here in the Twin Cities, they would ask him a question, and I'm sure he was watching the congressional hearings because he paused before he started to answer the question, and to make sure that the congressman wasn't going to talk over him or continue his speech or whatever. He looked directly at the congressman. He said, "Are you going to allow me to answer your question?" And I'm like, good on him. So he said, "Yeah, go ahead." And so he starts answering the question, and the congressman talks over him again. And it was at that point I'm like, yeah, these congressmen are not really being nice to the people they're questioning either. They're not shutting up to listen to the answer. So now I'm kind of conflicted on how these congressional hearings are really being run. It's just very confusing to me. So they're saying that crime is way down. Well, in the past 30 hours here in the Twin Cities, we have had 3 separate murders that have taken place. That has nothing to do with immigration. The one guy was let out of jail on, Friday morning on a bond, $35,000 bond. He had been arrested back on February 15th after a traffic stop, and when the police walked up to his car, they realized that he took his handgun and made it like an automatic weapon. So he was arrested for that, sent to jail, was released on Friday, and not 3 hours later, he went to Brooklyn Center. Actually, I don't know the timeline of what happened. I think he went to his cousin's house in Minneapolis, shot and killed 2 of his cousins with 4 other children in the house. Thankfully, the other kids were not physically harmed. Ranging in age from like 6 to 9, I think. The one was a 14-year-old, the other one was like a 27-year-old, and they were this guy's cousins. And then he went up to Brooklyn Center, and there was an officer involved shooting, which I think they killed the guy, and it was at an IHOP. So I'm not sure I mean, our local station is not giving a lot of details about how that ended up in Brooklyn Center, if he was threatening people in the area, or if the police had heard about the murder and then they found him in Brooklyn Center. I'm not sure about that. So it's like, okay, so they let him out of jail, and the second he gets out of jail, he goes and kills his two cousins. And then there was another shooting last night in Minneapolis that ended in a death at an apartment building. And I'm like, what is going on? Is this... I can't even wrap my head around this. They sent ICE agents here to arrest the worst of the worst, which was basically all the illegal immigrants, which my my House of Representative meeting said that it was undocumented immigrants. They're not using that in Washington, D.C. They're saying illegal immigrants. Our own people are doing this. Our own American citizens are committing these crimes. And yet, we're all supposed to be happy and pray for peace and this and that. But if you look in the Bible, and that's not going to be what this video is about either. I know I told you that I was going to make a video about what I learned in my one-year Bible. That's not what this video is about either. But in the Bible, it says that there will be wars and rumors of wars. Russia, Ukraine. But I mean, our own American citizens are turning on each other, which is kind of like a war. I mean, maybe not to that scale, but it's kind of like this guy that got let out of jail declared war on his cousins. So it's just not safe anywhere. It's not like when I was growing up. I'm sure stuff like this happened, but because I grew up in a very protective, overly protective parents, and in the suburbs, I didn't grow up in the inner city. I grew up in the suburbs. You just didn't hear about that. And as a kid, you're not really that interested in the news, so I wasn't on the news every night, or watching the news like my parents would. You know, I would be off in my room playing with my Barbies and listening to music or whatever. But I just find it interesting that, like, the older you get, the more you hear about all this death and destruction. And, you know, for a while it was kind of peaceful here after ICE left. Like I said, we only have 500 agents left on the streets. But, oh, and I should tell you that story too. But now it's like, now the news is going back to murder and mayhem. And I've said it in past videos. Don't these reporters get tired of reporting this stuff every day? And then they go home to their families probably feeling drained and probably needing a counselor themselves, going, I can't handle this. I could never be a news anchor, honestly, because reporting on this stuff, I'd want to go out and take my own life. Because you're reporting all this negativity all the time. And you just can't see any good in the world. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that all the news is bad, but the good news stories end up at the bottom of the heap. You always have, like, the breaking news stories are always this negativity stuff. You ever find that? Especially in this day and age, since COVID especially. But as far as ICE is concerned, I went into work the other day to discuss about my coming back and when that might be. And I was talking to some of my coworkers, and one of them was traveling. He was going to travel down to New Orleans, and he made it as far as Chicago, and ICE detained him. He did nothing wrong. He's not an immigrant, but ICE detained him. And I asked him, I said, were they violent? And he goes, oh yeah. And thankfully he only spent one night in jail, in their prison, whatever. I mean, he was kind of laughing about it, but I'm just like, people are like, oh, ICE isn't that, you know, the government will have you believe that they're doing these lawful arrests. And obviously that didn't happen with my friend, my coworker. So I'm like, maybe these, again, I'd like to call out to the people of Washington, D.C. and have them go walking on the streets and see, like, hide themselves in the crowd so that the ICE agents don't know you're there. And look from the back of the crowd and see how these ICE agents are doing their raids. And see that they're not doing what you're telling them to do, Kristi Noem. And Pam Bondi. Thankfully, my coworker's okay, obviously, because he was at work. But it was just kind of scary for him and scary for me to hear it. And of course, with me being surrounded by ICE agents that day that I was coming home from Minneapolis after bringing Silver Star to jury duty, nothing happened. I mean, but it's like every time I would slow down, the cars around me would slow down. Obviously, the guy behind me had to slow down, but the two on the side could have kept going, but they kept in pace with me. That's what had me worried. So I'm glad nothing happened, but that's why I don't leave my apartment with all this craziness. Pretty soon I'm going to have to. But at least my job doesn't take me anywhere near Minneapolis, which is good. But that's not to say that they're not in the suburbs, because obviously they are, because this was in a suburb of Minneapolis. So hopefully you guys haven't had any run-ins with ICE. But my next video will probably be by the end of this week, which will be my next Who Am I video, trying to determine how I'm going to run it going forward. There is a certain somebody I wish would stop watching my videos. But yeah, so, and the only other thing I'm going to say is my day is not starting out all that great, because I found out the other day that there's going to be a new addition to the family. Now, you would think that would make me happy, but this is baby number 5. And this is Clary. And I'm very concerned because she's 39. She's already got 4 kids. And they're struggling financially. And I'm concerned about her health and the baby's health. Because the older you get, the more kids you have, it can put your health and the baby's health in jeopardy. So when I tried to tell her this, she got on my case about it. So she and I have never really had a great relationship over the past several years. Not my choice. I feel like I'm just being a mom. You never stop being a parent. Never. I'm not sitting there holding my kids' hands, though. I mean, I am letting them live their lives, but that doesn't mean that I can't be concerned about them. I mean, the story goes way deeper than that, but I'm not going to go into that here. So, going forward, it sounds like she and I have had a falling out that may never be repaired. And that's her choice. It's going to take a huge apology and a lot of action on her part for me to accept it. Because I'm tired of being stabbed in the back. So hopefully when I go back to work, things will start going back to normal for me. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about that. So, in any case, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down so I can get this video out too. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Russian-Ukraine war and about how I'm going to proceed going forward. I do want to go back, I mean, as far as my Who Am I videos, I do want to go back as far as I possibly can. Thanks, Danny Dyer. Not like he'll ever watch this video, but I also want to find out information about family members, including one specifically that I recently found out about that I didn't even know existed. I'd have to do a lot more digging, and that's going to cost me some money to do that, but it's an interesting story that's very unsolved, so hopefully I can get that information pretty soon. Would involve my traveling to central Minnesota to get the information about it, and I might not even be able to get much information. But any information would be appreciated from these people up there. So at this point, my battery is about half empty, and which means I've gone over my time a little bit. I don't think I had a full battery when I started. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go, upload this video real quick. And I will continue to do these videos. Once I go back to work, obviously my videos will slow down with how often I put them out. I won't find out until next Tuesday when I'm going back to work. So I'll probably make a video about that too. But after tomorrow, I can organize some things with my Ancestry and start popping those videos out pretty quick here. So look for that video next, probably by the end of the week. And then I'll give you an updated video of when I go back to work and how my shoulder's doing, according to my doctor, because I see him on the 2nd. So looking forward. In a way, I'm looking forward to going back to work. In a way, I'm a little bit nervous about it because I'm still struggling with moving my arms certain ways. So, and being a cashier. So that does have me a little concerned. I am doing my physical therapy, but most of it is like going up above my head, which I don't have to do in my job because I scan products. So anyway, I'm going to shut up now. So thanks for joining me today. You guys have a good one. We'll see you on the next one, and have a sunny day.